This institution is unbelievable. I was honored to be here 4 years ago, and I was just amazed at the job doing by this museum. Well, my name is Greg Shershnevsky, and this young lady is my wife. We're together more than 60 years. We both are refugees from former Soviet Union, and we both are Holocaust survivors. Even our stories are different, but we both are Holocaust survivors. I would like to start our conversation with events which took place more than 100 years ago. 1918, end of World War II. World War I. Germany is defeated, Allied forces victorious, and Germans, majority of Germans, just dream about peace, about work, about prosperity. But there were a small group of Germans which said, wait a minute, guys. We did not lose war because we were weak, because Great Britain and Americans were so strong. No, we lost war because of our internal enemies, communists, liberals, but most important, Jews. They sold out us to our enemies, and we have to restore glory of Germany. Originally it was a small group, like less than 30 of them. And they got together in Munich, Germany, and they said that we will do everything to bring Germany back to its food. And their ideas became so popular that just a few years later, in 23, there were already over 3,000 of followers of those ideas. And their charismatic leader, Adolf Hitler, proclaims that their goal to destroy Jews and communists. In 1923, they became so powerful that they decided to overthrow Bavarian government. Their uprising was put down, Adolf Hitler was placed in jail, and this is where he came up or started writing his book, Mein Kampf, My Struggle. Little later in 1919, Allied came together in a royal palace, Versailles, near capital of France, Paris, and they signed peace treaty with Germany. According to the peace treaty, Germany was responsible for tremendous restitutions. Germany could not have heavy industry, could not have military, could not have heavy military divisions, and so on and so on. So ideas of those group, which actually created, they call themselves National Socialist Workers' Party of Germany. Their ideas was gaining more and more popularity as the economic situation in Germany grew worse and worse and worse. And they became so popular that in 1933, over 45% of Germans voted for National Socialist Workers' Party of America. They gained majority in their parliament or Reichstag, and Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany. And right away, they started implementing their ideas of fighting communists, fighting Jews, and so on and so on. In 1935, first concentration camp near Munich, Dachau, was built, and in the same year, on joint session of German Parliament, Reichstag, and Nazi leadership in the city of Nuremberg developed laws, famous Nuremberg laws, which describe Aryan, pure Aryan nation. What it requires to be pure Aryan. And of course, Jews could not be pure Aryans. They described Jews down to fourth generation, and they stripped Jews from their civil rights, from their human rights. According to those laws, Jewish doctor could not treat not Jewish patients. Jewish household could not have a whole house help younger than 45, and many other rules which strip Jews from their rights. And in 1938, on November 7 and 8 of 1938, so-called spontaneous riots against Jews were all over Germany. Dozens of Jews were murdered, hundreds of synagogues were burned down, thousands of Jewish businesses were destroyed. And this basically led to Holocaust. Now, okay. Yes, what you see on screen is Holocaust Memorial in Miami Beach, Florida. It's just centerpiece, but it's very impressive. If any one of you will have opportunity to be in Miami area, I suggest you visit it. It's very impressive. Well, number of years ago, Holocaust Resort Center asked me to talk to people, to students, to adults about Holocaust and my personal experience. And I was coming up with idea of speech, what to talk about. I asked my friends and relatives, what images create the word Holocaust? And there were many suggestions, but I selected what had some meaning for me. Prisoner number tattoo on their forearms, and people in striped robes behind barbed wire. Well, you might consider me lucky. I don't have that number, and I never had to wear the robe. I was too small to wear anything but diapers during Holocaust. And I'm not sure how many of Buffalo area Holocaust survivors have that number, or were forced to wear that robe. 6 years ago, team of Buffalo News correspondents decided to interview majority of Buffalo area Holocaust survivors. And on April 23rd, 2017, Day of Holocaust Remembers, Buffalo News came up with 10-page insert, what you see on screen, 10-page insert. There were 28 stories of Buffalo area Holocaust survivors. Stories as different as life itself may be different. There was story of Holocaust survivor Dr. Saul Messenger. Luckily, he is still with us. He was 7 years old when his family boarded ill-fated sea liner St. Louis. After those riots in November 38, majority of Jews, German Jews, realized that they have to escape, but not many had an opportunity. But those who managed to buy tickets on St. Louis boarded it in May of 1939, over 900 Jews trying to escape Germany, and St. Louis was on the road to Cuba, Havana, Cuba. All passengers had Cuban entry visas. But when St. Louis reached Cuba, Cuban government revoked all those visas. And Captain had no option but continue north to United States. Unfortunately, United States Coast Guards prevented St. Louis from docking in any of American ports. St. Louis continued north to Canada, and Canadian government did exactly the same. Captain had no option but to turn around and went back to Europe. Luckily, some countries like Great Britain, Belgium, France allowed some passengers to disembark there. Messenger family managed to get off ship in Belgium, eventually managed to move to France, and ended up in United States. There was story of Dr. Herman Stoll. He was born in birthplace of Nazi Party in Munich in 1924. So he was 14 years old, teenager, and when he eyewitnessed he saw with his own eyes what was going on, burning synagogues, destroying businesses, and so on. But luckily, the Stone family managed to escape Germany. His family ended up in the United States, in Buffalo, New York, and unfortunately, he passed away just a couple months ago. He was 98 years old. And so was my story. And my story was different. But my story was different in the sense that it was not about me. I was too little to understand what was going on, to understand suffering, to understand hunger, to understand cold. My story is about the heroes of Holocaust. Stephen said, don't be bystander. My story is about people who refuse to be bystanders, who in worst time in human history refuse to be bystanders. Those Gentiles who, risking their lives, try to save their Jewish friends, Jewish relatives, but more often totally unknown to them people. Well, I hope there are many Christians, many religion people. So you know that 2,000 years ago, almost 2,000 years ago, a rebellion Jew by name Jesus from Nazareth was crucified in Jerusalem. And Jesus, being on cross, asked his Father, his God, my God, why have you forgotten me? But of course, Jesus Christ didn't speak English. He spoke ancient Hebrew language, Aramaic. Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, he said, lama. Why? Why asked Jesus on cross? And that question, why, hangs over Jewish face for centuries and centuries, 100 years before Jesus Christ was born, through slavery in Egypt, through destruction of Solomon Temple 600 years before Jesus Christ was born, through crusaders, through Inquisition, through expulsion of Jews in 1492 from Spain and eventually from Portugal, through Inquisition, through pogroms in Poland, Ukraine, Russia, and eventually through Holocaust. Why life of this little child has to be cut short? Why Germans, one of most civilized nations in Europe, became nation of murderers? Why local population in most countries, not in all, but in most countries at best were bystanders, at worst actively participating in Holocaust? I don't know if you can see, but on the top there is a lady in white blouse. She is smiling because it's so funny to watch Jews on their knees picking up garbage on the street with her fingers. It's so funny, she is lucky. Well, I'm not a Holocaust scholar to answer those questions. But I speak a lot to schools. This year probably more than 20. And I address my own question, why to children. Most of children bearing some family tragedy have loving, caring mothers. Many have siblings, many have cousins. So my question, my personal why, is why I was deprived of it. Why I was deprived of knowing my own mother, feeling her love for me. I was deprived of befriending my cousins. Every single of my cousins, on my mother's side in Ukraine and on my father's side in Lithuania, were murdered, 3, 4, 5 years old. Every single one. Why? And the answer is very simple. I am a Jew. My parents were Jews, my cousins were Jews, and as such, according to Nazi ideology, we were not human beings. We were worse than rats, garbage. We had to be not just murdered, we had to be exterminated from the face of the earth. On May 14, 1948, State of Israel was reborn. New state from day one faced many, many problems, starting to building its industry, agriculture, medical care, education. But most important goal for new country was to preserve memory of 6 million Jews who perished in Holocaust. And just 5 years later, in 1953, they opened door to biggest in the world Holocaust Memorial Museum and Research Center in Jerusalem. It calls Yad Vashem. And what you see on screen in eternal flame hall in Yad Vashem. And on the floor, cast in stone, are names of most horrible places on the earth. Auschwitz, Buchenwald, Majdanek, Sobibor, and less known places. Right here in the middle, at the bottom, B-A-B upside down. And first letter of name, Babi Yar. Babi Yar is a ravine near capital of Kiev, where in 2 days, September 29 and September 30th, 1941, over 30,000 Ukrainian Jews were murdered in Babi Yar. 2 days, over 30,000. And there is another to the left, upside down, Panare. Panare is forest near the capital of Lithuania, Vilnius, where during the war, over 70,000 of Lithuanian Jews were murdered. You can see map of Europe. Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, France, Hungary. Soils of those nations is soaked in blood of innocent people. Some older people know who it is. This is the leader of Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin. He led Soviet Union from 1924 to 1953. This is what he says. The death of one man is a tragedy. The death of millions is statistic. Yes. For murderer like Stalin, who murdered millions of his own people, and like Hitler, who did the same, million deaths is just statistic. But it should not be statistic to any decent human being, because that million consists of mothers, fathers, children, grandparents, people with their loves, with their hopes, with their dreams. No, it's not statistics. What we see on screen is table with absolute number and percentage of Jewish population in many European occupied countries. And on the top, you can see Finland, of course. Out of 2,000 Jews living in Finland, only 7 perished in Holocaust. Finland was ally of Nazi Germany. But when Gestapo requested Finnish government to turn over Jews to be sent to Auschwitz, their commander-in-chief, Marshal Monaghan, flatly refused. Says, it will bring down morale of my army, I will not do it. But unfortunately, secret police arrested 8 Jews who escaped Austria and took them over to Gestapo. 8 of them perished in Holocaust, were murdered by Gestapo. And after the war, a group of religion Christians, Finns, moved to Israel and established a village and named it Memory of 8. And at the bottom, Lithuania. 95% of Lithuanian Jews perished in Holocaust. When I talk to students, I express my opinion that number doesn't say anything. So about 95%. But I was told that there are more than 100 people here. If this was Jewish group in 41 in Lithuania, at the end of the war will be just 5. Out of this entire whole, just 5 will be alive. It has been estimated that of 265,000 Jews living in Lithuania in June 41, 254,000 of 95% were murdered during the German occupation. No other Jewish community in Nazi-occupied Europe was so comprehensively destroyed. This is Lithuanian woman. Her name is Ruta Vanagaitė. She was growing up in Lithuania under communist rules, hearing stories from her parents about her heroic grandfather, who in 1939 fought Russian occupation and in 45 fought establishment of communist power in Lithuania. He was arrested and he perished in Russian concentration camps. So in 1991, when Lithuania gained independence and KGB archives were opened, she decided to find a file on her heroic grandfather. And she was allowed to go to archive, and she found file on her grandfather. But when she opened it, she was horrified. First document in that file was thank you letter from Gestapo for his effort coming up with list of known to him Jews. He didn't kill Jews with his own hands. He just helped them to be arrested and executed. She was really horrified, but she started thinking, wait a minute. If my heroic grandfather took part in murdering of Jews, what about the rest of my country? And Lithuania is a small country, by size is less than half of New York State. Originally, there were, the time we were living there were 3 million population, today it's far less. So she decided to travel all over that small country, looking for places where Jews were murdered. She visited 280 places in that small country where Jews were murdered. But what was worse, in overwhelming majority of those places, no one ever saw German soldiers. Jews were murdered by Lithuanians. She came up with book, it calls Ours. idea of book was that Jews who were murdered were our neighbors, our doctors, our shoemakers, our lawyers, and those who murdered them were the same, our doctors, our students, our neighbors. So you can imagine that that book was not very warmly accepted in Lithuania. Through 39, 40, 41, murdering of European Jews were going full-blown speed, but not fast enough for Nazi leadership. So in January of 42, in this villa near Berlin, 16 leaders, military leaders and civilian leaders of Nazi Germany assembled to discuss how to speed up that final solution, meaning total elimination of European Jews. They discussed how many more concentration camps have to be built, how many more crematoriums have to be built, how much more Zyklon B gas has to be ordered here. In Holocaust room, first time in my life I saw the can of Zyklon B gas. And they appointed this man, I cannot call him gentleman, this man, to lead this effort, final solution. His name is Adolf Eichmann, and he did a great job. He oversaw construction of new concentration camps. He oversaw construction of additional crematoriums in Auschwitz and another concentration camp. He didn't kill Jews with his own hands, but on his conscience are millions and millions of murdered Jews. He did a great job. But in 1945, at the end of the war, he disappeared from the face of the earth. Intelligence services of all Allied forces were looking for him, could not find him. In 1958, Israeli Secret Service Mossad located Adolf Eichmann in Argentina. It took them 2 years to develop operation. Eventually they managed to capture him and smuggle him out of Argentina. They didn't want to kill him. They could kill him in Argentina. They wanted to put him on trial for crimes and crimes against humanity. And they put him on trial in 1961, I think, in Jerusalem. He was recognized as guilty. The trial was broadcast all over the world, and he was executed in Israel in 1962. And at that meeting, they also developed list how many more Jews remain to be murdered, and they knew up to dozen how many Jews were living in each European country. How did they know it? Well, America helps them. Our IBM corporation sold Nazis predecessors of computers, punch card machines. Some of you may know, may saw even punch card machines. And using IBM punch card machines, Nazis analyzed population count in every single country. And you can see Albania, 200, they knew that 200 were living in that country. You remember the table I showed you where on the top was Finland. Actually, Albania is supposed to be on the top. Not even one Jew perished in Albania. Albania is a mixed religion country, Christian and Muslims. But disregarding their religion beliefs, Albanian people managed to hide every single Jew in their country. This is our country, and no one perished in Holocaust. On March 23, 2000, Pope John Paul visited Yad Vashem. You can see him praying. He is praying for memory of 6 million Jews perished in Holocaust. also, he is praying for memory and well-being of those who are still alive, of over 28,000 heroes of Holocaust, those who strive to save Jews, over 28,000. And Yad Vashem established title for such Gentile, righteous among nations. And when just first names of such heroes became known, Yad Vashem established Garden of Righteousness and planted tree in honor of such hero. But as more and more names became known, they created alleys of righteousness. And along those alleys are stone monuments with hundreds and hundreds names of those heroes. What you see on screen, very unusual Holocaust memorial. It calls empty chairs. It's located in Polish city, Krakow. On this plaza, Krakow Jews were requested to assemble to be transported to Auschwitz, nearby Auschwitz. Some families were picked up by trucks right away. Some had to spend day waiting for trucks. So some managed to get chairs for their elders, not to sit on the ground. But when they were taken to their death in Auschwitz, only empty chairs remained on that plaza. But not every single Krakow Jew perished in Holocaust. And over 1,200 of them were alive thanks to this gentleman, Oskar Schindler. There are many righteous among nations who saved more than Oskar Schindler, but he is best known around the world thanks to Steven Spielberg movie Schindler's List, Oscar-winning movie Schindler's List. He saved close to 1,200 Jews by employing them in his kitchen utensil factory which supplied the German army. When he passed away in 1974, and he was buried on slope of Mount Sinai in Jerusalem, over 400 Jews from his so-called Schindler List, those he saved, came to his funeral to pay him their last respect. There is Jewish expression: if you kill one person, you kill the world. If you save one person, you save the world. And latest number, unfortunately, only from 2012, I found on internet. All over the world were living over 8,500 descendants of Schindler Jews. He saved 1,200, but 85 descendants were living. Today, probably that number is maybe twice, maybe 3 times more. This is what it means to save the world. Irene Sander, Polish nurse. She was placed in charge for health condition in Warsaw Ghetto. Warsaw Ghetto was biggest ghetto in Europe. Over 500,000 Jews were forced to live in Warsaw Ghetto. Not that Nazis were concerned about health of Jews in ghettos. They were concerned to make sure that there is no epidemic disease can spread to the rest of the city. Using her position and having number of assistants, Irene managed to smuggle out of Warsaw Ghetto over 2,500 Jewish children and place them with Polish families. And they survived. She was caught by Gestapo, she was tortured, her legs were broken, but she survived. She was 3 times nominated by Nobel Peace Prize. This is another very unusual Holocaust memorial, empty shoes. In 1924, Nazis invaded Hungary. Hungary was ally of Nazis. It was not invaded. But when Hungary decided to sign peace treaty with Russia, separate from Germany, Nazis invaded Hungary, and out of 800 Hungarian Jews, 600 already perished in Auschwitz. Amen? So Nazis took over power to pro-Nazi party Cross Arrows. And then Cross Arrows decided to get rid of the rest of Hungarian Jews. So they were taking group of 60 Jews from Budapest ghetto, ties them up with a rope, brought to shore of Danube River, one of the most beautiful rivers in Europe, and shot just one person. That person fell to the river, pulling separate and so on. But before killing them, they requested them to take off their shoes because they could sell them on black market. So this is what it represents. But again, not all Hungarian Jews perished in Holocaust. And thousands of them were saved by this gentleman, Raoul Wallenberg. He was Swedish diplomat, and Sweden was neutral country. So having passport of neutral country, you at least were safe from deportation. Raoul Wallenberg worked day and night issuing Swedish passports. He is credited with saving over 4,000 Jews. But when Budapest was liberated by the Red Army, they arrested Raoul Wallenberg, accused him of being a spy, and he disappeared in Russian concentration camps. Karl Lutz, Swiss diplomat, he had many more assistants than Raoul Wallenberg, and he is credited with saving over 60,000 Hungarian Jews. And this is an amazing story. Tibor Baransky. He was 22 years old in 1944. He was student of a Christian seminary, but when the Red Army was coming to Hungary, he realized that students will be arrested because Russia is against religion. So he moved to Budapest. And being in Budapest, his aunt asked him if he could save, using his priest position, save family of their friend, Jewish family. 22 years old boy went to leader of Catholic Church, Hungarian Catholic Church, and asked for help. That leader was so much impressed by that boy that he says, why do you try to save only one family? Use my name, be my representative, save as many as you can. And 22 years old boy managed to save 3,000 Hungarian Jews. But when Hungary was liberated by Red Army and communist power was established, him being priest was arrested, sentenced to jail, and spent 5 years in jail. When he was released from jail, he managed to get out of Hungary, through Germany, through France, ended up in the United States, in Buffalo, New York. And he spent the rest of his life in Buffalo. He passed away just a couple of years ago, and last year, Buffalo Jewish community with Hungarian consulate celebrated 100th birth of Tibor Baransky, and on Forest Lawn, biggest cemetery in Buffalo, was installed big monument in his memory. And this is another amazing story. Sir Nicholas Winton. He was born in 1909 in Great Britain to successful banker, joining his father when he grew up. And in 1938, he decided to spend vacation skiing in European Alps. But on the way to Alps, he stopped by in Czechoslovakia, in Prague, to meet his friend. Czechoslovakia already was occupied by Nazis. And he saw little children walking on the streets, not on sidewalk, on the pavement, with Star of David on their clothes. He never heard of it, never saw anything like this, but his friend explained to him, these are Jewish children. Jews are not allowed to walk on sidewalk. Jews have to walk on pavement. And they are being picked up and taken to concentration camp. He could not stand it. He got in touch with his mom in Great Britain, asking her to find families which will accept Jewish children. And he started picking up a group of children, putting them on train across entire Europe to Great Britain. And his mom placed them with British families. Biggest group, over 250 children, supposed to leave Prague on September 1st, 1939. But as you know, World War II started, borders were closed, and most of those children perished in Holocaust. When war started, Nicholas returned to Great Britain, eventually joined British Army, took part in the war. After war was over, he got back to Great Britain, never mentioned anything, created his family, never talking about what happened. 50 years later, in 1988, his wife found in their attic box with children pictures, with children documents, definitely Jewish names. So she asked for explanation, and Nicholas told her what he has done, because she was amazed. She shared that story with BBC, and one day, Nicholas was invited to BBC broadcast on the subject of World War II. He was not surprised, he was a veteran of World War II, so on. But when broadcast started, he realized that entire broadcast was about him, what he has done. And suddenly moderator asked audience if there is any child in audience saved by Nicholas. And take a look. Whole audience stood up. They were not children anymore. There were parents, there were great parents, but every single one was alive thanks to Nicholas. And today, and I hope forever, this monument will continue standing on the Prague main train station. In 2003, Queen Elizabeth knighted him. He became Sir Nicholas. But most important, God awarded him long life. He lived 106 years, and he passed away in 2015. I mentioned a number of times that those heroes of Holocaust were risking their lives. 6 years ago, Buffalo Central Library hosted an exhibition dedicated to memory of Polish family, Urma family. It was family, husband, pregnant wife, and 6 little children. When they found out that their neighbor Jews were arrested and sent to concentration camp, they could not stand it. So they managed to hide on their farm 8 Jews, their neighbors, but they were betrayed. Gestapo came over, in front of everyone killed those 8 Jews, in front of parents killed 6 little children and killed parents. So there are not nice words to emphasize here heroism. They are really for risking their lives. And this brings me to my personal story. I was born in 1941 in capital of Lithuania, Vilnius. Until 1939, Lithuania was an independent country. Some of you may know that in middle of September 1939, the Nazi army was going across Poland. From opposite side, a Red Army moved and occupied the rest of the Poland. And the Red Army and Nazi army met in the middle of Poland, and in Polish city Brest-Litovsk, they had parade, joint parade of Russian and German army. At the same time, Soviet Union occupied 3 Baltic states under pretense preventing Nazi occupation, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. And a year later, in 1940, Soviet Union forced those 3 states to become legally part of Soviet Union, to become republics of Soviet Union. So I was born in 41 when Lithuania already was part of Soviet Union. And as you well know, Nazis, Germany invaded Soviet Union at 4 o'clock in the morning on June 22nd, 1941. And just 4 days later, my city was already occupied. There was no chance to escape. And right away, those famous Nuremberg laws were implemented in Lithuania. Jews were grabbed on the streets, on their residences, on their businesses, and taken to Panave and executed. But chasing Jews all over the city was not productive. So just a couple months later, I think it's the end of August or beginning of September, they requested also Jews to move to very small areas of Old Town, and they created Jewish ghetto. Actually, they created 2 ghettos. You can see ghetto 2, just three small streets, and bigger, ghetto number 1. Ghetto number 2 existed just 1 month. Within that month, children, senior people, sick people were taken to Panave and murdered. People capable of working were moved to ghetto number 1. My parents, my mom, my dad, and me, I was 5 months old, were forced to move to ghetto number 1. And just 1 month later, when my father's sister was moved from ghetto 2 to ghetto 1, my parents already knew that all my cousins were dead. So my parents realized that they will not be able to hide me for a long time. Every so often, Nazis with Jewish police performed so-called actions. Children action, meaning that they were specifically looking for little children because children were not productive, they were food consumers. So they were taking children to Panave, executing. So my parents were looking for ways to smuggle me and to find place where to smuggle me. It was very difficult because all the streets leading out of ghetto were blocked, and only one street at this gate. So this gate, in the morning, column of Jews were taken to their workplaces, and at night were taken back to ghetto. So it was very, very difficult to smuggle me. But most importantly, smuggle where? But eventually my parents found out that in the city lives this Polish woman, deeply religious Catholic woman. Her name is Miss Alexandra Jewelsky. She didn't have her own children. She was totally non-political. She didn't care for communism. She didn't care for fascism. She cared for children. If she saw orphan on the street, and you can imagine during the war there were many orphans, she made sure to take the orphan to her basement apartment, at least to feed the child, and try to find family to place the child with. And my parents got in touch with her, and asked if she will agree to hide Jewish child. And Miss Alexandra, understanding that she is risking her life, she says, yes, I will hide your child. Now question was how to smuggle me, how to get her. My mother was forced to work as cleaning lady in various city offices. And because it was not just one place, every day she had to go to different office, she was carrying with her her cleaning supply, cleaning bucket, the racks, and so on. So one day in middle of November 1941, I was 7 months old. My parents put me into that bucket, covered me with the racks. I don't know, I just assumed that probably maybe they gave me some few drops of wine or something to make sure that I will be sleeping, not waking up. And as every other day, my mother with column of Jews walked out of ghetto carrying that bucket. At specific place, she just drops the bucket, picked up empty bucket, and just continue walking. I am 82 years old. I still cannot imagine what my mother felt at that time. Parting with her 7 months old, the only child, hoping, not being sure, but hoping the child will survive. And eventually I ended up in Miss Alexandra's basement apartment. But now, this is a war. Every person in the city must be registered with the city hall under Nazi supervision to make sure that there were not guerrilla fighters hiding in the city. And food was distributed only to registered people. And suddenly she has 7 months old baby she had to feed. She went to city hall and told them, luckily I didn't look like Jewish child, she told them that she found child on the steps of the church and she wants to adopt the child. So ask them to register. And being deeply religious Catholic woman, she selected this Catholic saint, Saint Stanislaus of Kostko, as my guardian angel. And she registered me as Stanislav Marian, last name Kostko. So without one stroke of pen, Jewish boy Greg became Polish child Stanislav Marian Kostko. Now, I was legally with her. She was getting food. She was not concerned of being arrested. I didn't look like Jewish child. So I was among few kids living in her basement apartment. How she managed to dress me up, how she managed to feed me, I don't know, and I don't remember. It was little baby. But on this picture, I look pretty well fed and pretty well dressed. And this girl, Christina, her name, was oldest orphan living with Miss Alexandra. And every so often, she took me on stroll along walls of the ghetto, so my parents through the windows could see that I'm alive and well. But in 1943, when I was 2 years old, rumors spread that ghetto will be liquidated, meaning everyone will be taken to Panave and executed. So Miss Alexandra realized that most likely I will stay with her for the rest of our natural lives. So I will her come. And she realized that yes, she registered me, but she never got a piece of paper. So she went back to City Hall and said, listen guys, 2 years ago you registered birth of my child, but you never gave me a piece of paper. Can you give me a copy of birth record? They didn't see any problem with it, and they got this birth certificate. in Lithuanian language, of course. On left-hand side, it says Stanislav Marion Kosko. In middle, parents are known, and date is May 24th of 1943. So now she was saved. She didn't care who will win, who will lose war. She had my birth certificate. We were fine. Then rumors about liquidation of ghetto reached ghetto itself. And in ghetto there was very active underground organization. And that organization slowly was smuggling young members out of ghetto to nearby forest partisan groups who were fighting Nazis from forest. And they decided that instead of uprising like in Warsaw ghetto, they will try to smuggle as many as possible Jewish fighters to forest. So one of such group, big group, was led by my parents. They were very active in underground activities. They, as group, going to workplace, left to the gate and went to the city and almost reached forest, but they were betrayed, they were ambushed, and out of 150 Jews trying to escape ghetto, only 7 survived. My father survived, eventually reached partisans in forest and continued fighting Nazis, already being part of the armed group. Unfortunately, my mother was captured and taken to Panama and executed. Here is my father in 1944, when city was liberated, and he came to city trying to find out what happened with his wife or my mother. And of course, he got in touch with Miss Alexandra, asking her to give me to him. During fighting for liberation of city, Miss Alexandra saw through her basement window that someone fell down in our courtyard. She didn't know it was German soldier or Russian soldier. She didn't care. She saw a human being in need of help. She was 60 years old. She crawled out of her basement, pulled the person to her basement window, eventually pulled him to her basement, and took care of his wounds, and realized it was Russian. So when city was liberated, she reported to Russian authorities that she had Russian soldier. Medics came over and realized it was not soldier, it was major of Russian army. So from political standpoint, it's just great event. Local population saves life of liberator. So military newspaper sent correspondent to write story about her heroic act. That correspondent got to her basement apartment and saw a bunch of little kids, too small even to be her great-grandkids. So he just asked, what's going on? Who are those children? And Miss Alexandra just shared her story. Who is each child? He was so impressed that that entire article in military newspaper became story about her saving children. It started with my story, how she saved me. And take a look on picture. First from the left is that girl with stroller. That cute blonde kid is hard to believe that it's me. And to the right of me, Jewish girl, typical Jewish girl. Her name is Gitela Gittelman. She was born in ghetto to parents who already didn't have work permit, meaning they were destined for Panama. But it was big family, parents, grandparents, aunts, and so on. So they occupied one room in apartment. Because in ghetto, one room could be occupied by 2, 3, 4 families, a small family. They occupied whole room. So they built false wall And whenever there was search or action, they were hiding behind that wall. Gitela was 1 month old when first children action was performed by Jewish police, ghetto police. So they were hiding behind that wall, and her grandfather covered her mouth with his mouth, giving her a chance to breathe through his lungs. That search lasted less than 1 day. But months later, when she was already 2 months old, Gestapo performed action. So they were hiding behind that wall for 2 days. But they managed to get medication which puts a person to sleep, like anesthesia. So they kept the 2 months old girl sleeping under medication. Most likely she would never wake up. But as soon as search was over, I don't know how, but they managed to smuggle Gitela to Miss Alexandra. She could not take Gitela to City Hall. It was typical Jewish girl, and just one look and everyone says it's a Jew. That brave woman built doll, size of 2 months old baby, and took the doll to City Hall. And when she just enters the registration department, and people look at her and say, please don't come close. I have child dying from some kind of infection disease. She may be dead now, she may be dead in a day, but I am Catholic. I cannot just throw a human being on the street. I want to give her human burial. But to do so, I need birth certificate and I need death certificate. When people heard infection disease, they really didn't want to even come close. So they wrote birth certificate, came up death certificate. Here you have get out. Heavy birth certificate. Miss Alexandra placed Gitela into Catholic. Oops, something is wrong. It's not me. Can someone fix it? Oh, okay. Placed her in Catholic hospital and saved her life. And here is Gitela Gittelman in Tel Aviv in 1968. She was alive, the same like me, thanks to this Polish Catholic woman, Miss Alexandra Dziewicki. In 1992, mother of Gitela Gittelman submitted testimony to Yad Vashem, and Miss Alexandra was awarded the title of Righteous Among Nations, and her name is cast in stone on those monuments in Yad Vashem. We're talking about Holocaust, we're talking about persecution of Jews, and it make impressions that hate has only one face, anti-Semitism. No. Hate has many faces. And this was Martin Niemöller, a Lutheran pastor, said, they came first for the communists, and I did not speak up because I was not communist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak up because I was not a Jew. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak up because I was not a unionist. Then they came for Catholics, and I did not speak up because I was Protestant. Then they came for me, and by that time, no one was left to speak up. So why I'm talking to you? Why I'm talking to hundreds and hundreds of students? Speak up. Speak up anytime you see expression of hate. It doesn't matter if it's anti-Semitic or it's anti-Christian or it's anti-Muslim. Hate has no place among us. And here what Albert Einstein says, the world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything. So as Stephen said, don't be bystander, be outstander. And remember, there is evil in the world, but world is not evil. And it's up to us, young and old, to make world a better place for everyone. Thank you very much.